You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 8th of November 2013. Lucy was kidnapped, gang raped and then cruelly betrayed by the British justice system. Poor record on illegal immigrants' removals. Universities cancel Muslim cleric speaking tour over concerns over his anti-gay views. Anti-austerity strikes in Greece cripple public services. Greece, we're not leaving, ERT is on air, evicted workers continue to broadcast. Netherlands, court rules preparing for jihad is a crime. Nick Griffin MEP from the belly of the beast. Saudi nuclear weapons on order from Pakistan. Cultural differences allow paedophiles to escape the law, says internationally recognised child sex abuse investigator Chris O'Connor. Putin signs law requiring terrorists' relatives to pay for damages. Thought for the day, only 70 million of them and more. And finally, burglars or a catcall. UK News. Lucy was kidnapped, gang raped and then cruelly betrayed by the British justice system. Attackers Rezgar Nuri, 27, and Mohammed Ibrahim, 23, laughed as they repeatedly raped Lucy Walsh in 2011. At Preston Royal Hospital, doctors found she had suffered such severe internal injuries that it was 4 days before they could fully examine her. The two were convicted and given indeterminate sentences. Then in June 2012, Ibrahim and Nuri appealed against their indeterminate sentences, which were changed to 12 years, but they could be freed in half that. The police are still looking for a third attacker. 23-year-old illegal immigrant Mohammed Ibrahim was granted British citizenship whilst in prison awaiting trial for the rape, but has since had his citizenship revoked. The Home Office has said that when they have served their sentence, Nuri and Ibrahim will be deported. Fearful for her safety with an attacker still at large, Lucy has fled to Canada. World at 8. They should be deported with any family before their sentence. Why are we Brits paying for these disgusting remnants of subhumanity to live and eat after their crimes? Let them serve them in their own countries, but of course with human rights laws that means we would be sending them to their deaths, probably, which is no bad thing. These men appear to come over to the UK primarily to rape non-Muslim girls and women. It must be stopped at source. Poor record on illegal immigrant removals. The former UK border agency only removed 1.5% of illegal immigrants following tip-offs from the public, a news report reveals. Fewer than 1 in 50 reports of illegal immigration result in a person being removed from the country, according to a new report from the Home Affairs Select Committee. A closer look at the allegations database, set up by the now defunct UK border agency, UKBA, to follow up tip-offs by the public, reveals only 6% of claims led to an investigation and 1.5% led to removals. The report also said backlogs in immigration and asylum applications could take over 5 years to clear if more is not done. World at 8 comments. I get it done much sooner. Universities cancel Muslim cleric speaking tour over concerns about his anti-gay views. Mufti Ismail Menk has described same-sex acts as filthy and wrong. A Muslim cleric who preaches that gay people are worse than animals is at the centre of a fierce free speech row after being invited to speak at universities across the country. Mufti Ismail Menk was due to visit 6 universities: Oxford, Leeds, Leicester, Liverpool, Cardiff and Glasgow next week. But the speaking tour was cancelled after student unions and university officials expressed concern about his views. The Zimbabwean cleric who studied in Saudi Arabia has described same-sex acts as filthy, wrong and synonymous with acts of immorality. He's been recorded as saying, with all due respect to the animals, gay people are worse than those animals. World at 8 states. It's rare that I agree with Muslims, although I'm not anti-gay, I can understand where he's coming from. Nowhere in any Bible, Quran, Talmud, whatever, is the act of homosexuality condoned or encouraged. I don't care who does what to whom, but these days you virtually are encouraged to have an alternative lifestyle from an early age, and that is wrong. All our universities are politically correct Marxist hellholes, and of course this guy, along with any nationalist, will not be welcome. European news. Anti-austerity strikes in Greece cripple public services. In another round of strike action against austerity measures in Greece, public transport has been disrupted across the bailed-out Eurozone nation. Protesters said international lenders were destroying the country. Greece, we're not leaving, ERT is on air, evicted workers continue to broadcast. Former employees of Greek television channel ERT have been continuing to broadcast from outside the company's Athens headquarters after riot police evicted them from the building on November the 7th. The Greek government pulled the plug in June, turning off ERT's signal and sacking its 2,600 staff. Many workers refused to accept the shutdown and continue to occupy the channel's headquarters, broadcasting via the internet. On the street outside the cleared building, journalist representative Machi Nikolaou said, "We are here, ERT employees continue to work. Over the next few days we'll find ways to produce radio and TV programmes with the consistency and professionalism that has characterised our work throughout this time." Dimitris Gounas of ERT union Pospert said the former employees had a lot of support from the Greek public. Based on their support, we will continue our fight, he told Euronews. Netherlands. Court rules preparing for jihad is a crime. A Rotterdam district court has convicted 2 men of making preparations to participate in the armed conflict in Syria. Mohammed G was convicted of preparing for murder. He does not, however, have to go to jail, as according to the Rotterdam court, he is completely non compos mentis. Mohammed G prepared for participating in the jihad in Syria, among other things, by collecting money, cancelling his rent, packing rucksacks and reading jihadist texts. The man suffers from psychoses in which he experiences a spirit ordering him to do things such as go to Syria. He will therefore not receive a sentence, but he does have to go to a psychiatric hospital. World at 8, yet another Muslim barmy to be looked after by your taxpayers. Nick Griffin MEP and the Belly and the Beast. I now hand you over to Nick Griffin MEP, who talks about online activism and political campaigning, to name a couple of items.
I've been in Brussels this week with Simon Darby, Clive Jefferson, Adam Walker and Charlie Wythe. We've had an extraordinarily busy and productive schedule, but we put a lot of it on Voxbox, the parliamentary TV operation. These clips are going to be put on BNP TV and on our website over the next few days, so I won't repeat what's there, but do have a look at those. There's a heck of a lot going on. What I would like to emphasise, though, is that really the core reason for our journey there together and the bulk of our time was spent on planning the European elections. I'm pleased to say that we're doing this much earlier than last time around when we won the seats back in 2009. So we're ahead of our game, which is a very nice position to be in, especially when we've come up with really such I think a tremendous campaign, or almost series of campaigns leading us up towards the really important vote. Now, if I told you what we've come up with, of course, I'd have to kill you all. So I'm not going to, but I can tell you that we've worked out a really dynamic and forceful campaign. Let's be blunt about it. The party was really knocked about by all the attacks launched on us, and a few of our mistakes as well, from 2007 onwards, but particularly 9, 10, 11. They were really hard times, and we lost a lot of people. We've suffered a lot of damage to our structure, and we've come a long way to recover. The money's completely sorted out. We're back as the only game in town in nationalist politics, but we've still got a long, steep climb back. The good thing about this is that it's made us really totally rethink how we work and what we do. And I'd say that when the dust has really completely settled, it'll be seen that the problems we've been through and the damage we've taken have forced us to reassess what we do, and in particular really move and work hard, work more intelligently, and to really push on with developing and using modern technology and really innovative methods. We're already doing it, but by the time we get to next May, you're going to see a really ultra-modern campaign by the British National Party. We've got a long way to go, but make no mistake, we really are in this to win, and we've got a real chance of winning. We're not going into this with the thought, well, we're just going to do a campaign. We're going into this campaign because we want and we intend to win. Now, with the modernisation, we've been taking a similar approach with our own organisation for many months. A lot of it's in the early stages experimental. You don't see the benefits, but it is now really paying off. I'll give you just one example. Our online activism system. If you're not an online activist, and we've got hundreds upon hundreds of them now doing really good work, but if you're not, get on our website, click the top banner when it comes around to it, and register as an online activist. It's a really easy thing to do. It's really, a lot of it's virtually automated. Certainly that's how it works with me. I'm up there, but this year this month I won the prize. Let me hasten to add that as a member of staff I don't get the prize. That's for the activists. But it's fun to use, it's easy to use, and it really is having a great effect. Now, so far we've been using it for the purpose for what the system is designed, which is really to build bridges into the public's consciousness. It was created, the system that we use, to allow businesses and clubs, football clubs and such like, to get their supporters and their customers to spread the word about their product or about the club, whatever it may be. And we've got many hundreds of thousands of people now we're reaching every time, so we're using it for what it was intended. But we also, as we've used it, realised that there's another very, very valuable use for the online activism system for us, which isn't there for most businesses or football clubs or nightclubs or whatever. It's there for political campaigning. And we've been waiting for the right time to launch the second stage. Well, we're here now because you've probably seen the headlines over the last couple of days about John Miller, the brutal, appalling drug addict who murdered his partner and one of their two little girls up in Leeds and has been jailed, in fact, to a pathetic maximum 17 years in prison, when for his crimes that man should hang. That would be justice, and it would be deterrent to prevent other people doing the same thing in the future. But that's a slightly different matter. Coming back to the purpose of what I'm telling you now, we spent much of our journey home from Brussels yesterday working on our response to the wave of media attacks over the fact that Miller was once, very briefly, back in 2004, a member of the British National Party. And some papers have said he used to be a member, and that's a fair comment. Quite what it's got to do with it, I don't know, because clearly murdering your own family is something which is not in the line of the British National Party. If they really want to look at political parties with responsibility in some way for Miller's murder spree, they need to look at the people who have pressed to undermine the war on drugs, who are still pressing to legalise skunk cannabis, when these are the kind of drugs which are destroying people's minds and turning odd people like John Miller into psychopathic killers. We've got, as you know, a policy of absolutely zero tolerance on drugs and having a proper war on drugs. The parties, the people, including the BBC, who've undermined the police's pathetic attempt at a war on drugs, they're the ones responsible, morally, for the actions of drug addicts, not us. But of course the papers didn't see it like that. They've seen a tremendous opportunity to hammer the BNP with headlines like BNP Axe Murderer, and we spent a lot of the journey home organising our response to it. An instant response article for the very large number of people, ironically, drawn to our site, I suppose, to see what we say about it. So we had that up there very, very quickly. A very effective press statement was sent out to thousands of newspapers, which I'm quite sure will help to prevent a lot of the smaller weekly papers picking up and running with the, I won't say mindless smears, the vicious smears of some of the big papers, particularly the Murdoch press. So that was a lot of work, and we also discussed and made the decision to unleash the very significant power of our online activists onto those papers which refuse to publish the corrections that they should. So we're giving them 24, 48 hours in which to act as we press them to act, but for sure a lot of them won't, and at that stage we're going to unleash our online activists, not just spreading the word about the BNP, as we've been doing so far, but actively getting out there and attacking those who attack us, online and in terms of telephone calls, clogging up their phone lines, email barrages and such like. We've used this tactic in the past very effectively, actually, for instance against police stations when our people have been wrongly arrested, but we were only mobilising people to, for instance, phone and jam their switchboards by email bulletins. We'll still be using those, but now, of course, we've got this additional huge alerting and mobilising power, of which we've been working very hard to develop behind the scenes, Facebook, Twitter, and our army of online activists. And all sorts of institutions are about to start to find out that trying to push the BNP around now carries a very heavy price. One institution's already found that out. While we were travelling yesterday, we got a really welcome call from one of our solicitors, one of our legal teams. And he told us that they just heard from the district judge looking at the case of Clive Jefferson and Dawn Charlton. Both councillors, as you will know, were arrested in dawn raids by 24 armed police between them some months ago, after the Labour Party said that by putting out a leaflet which criticised them for using cheap Polish labour to put out leaflets in the wrong place, our comment, pay peanuts, get monkeys, was a race crime, a thought crime. So, doors banged on in the early morning, armed police, riot police outside, arrest, computers wrecked, all the usual things that come as a result. And the media up in Cumbria, and in fact nationally, had clearly assumed that Clive and Dawn were going to be found guilty. Another attack, successful attack, by the powers that be on the British National Party. But no, the judge has looked now at the legal arguments, and he'd already warned the Crown Prosecution Service that really they didn't have a case, that their attempted action was completely misconceived and illegal, and now it's been thrown out. So, really great news, particularly for councillors Jefferson and Charlton, but actually for all of us, because if those charges had stuck, it would have affected our rights, your rights, to put out leaflets and campaign. In fact, it's so big this isn't just a victory for Clive and Dawn, not even just a victory for the British National Party. This is a victory on behalf of every political activist, current and future, in this country, regardless of their party and what they want to see. It's an enormous victory for free speech, and it's an utterly humiliating blow to the Crown Prosecution Service, the state generally, and the police. It really is something very, very important. So now we go on the attack. We're already putting in a blitz of Freedom of Information Act requests, and we especially want to find out what this Operation Motivate, as it was dubbed, has cost, with 24 armed police taking 27 witness statements, using translators. Very strange this, if someone can't speak English, how on earth can they be offended by a leaflet that comes through their door? But it's all cost a fortune. We're going to find out exactly how much. And then we'll build on the utter humiliation that the Crown Prosecution Service, the police, and the Labour architects of this scandalous act of political harassment are already feeling, and we're going to use what they've blown, how much money they've wasted, taxpayers' money. We're going to turn this into a really powerful political weapon, especially for use in the next wave of elections up there, which we intend to win. Recent months have also seen a continuation of our Back to the Streets campaign and our policy of putting ourselves in the position of really leading the active street resistance movement. We saw it the other day with a really good demonstration, despite the appalling weather up in Blackpool on the 10th anniversary of the disappearance of little Charlene Downs. It was really good at that event to see former EDL members starting to find their real home in and working with the British National Party. There's a lot more of that to come, just as we're now seeing, sort of on the other side of our political spectrum, a steady trickle of former UKIP members joining us as Farage's deeply corrupt and self-centred style of mismanagement plunges that party back into another round of civil war. We are starting to see these people come over. We're going to see a lot more yet, and UKIP's heading for a really rough patch, there's no doubt of that. As for us, as you probably know already, we're already going through a period of rising support and really very high morale. And on the basis of that, we're gearing up for what I hope will be the biggest demonstration of the British National Party's ability to mobilise people on the streets on issues that the public agree with. The Lee Rigby trial of the alleged murderers of drummer Lee Rigby, starts at the Old Bailey. And we've got a demonstration there organised starting 9 a.m. onwards for Monday the 18th of this month. If you don't by chance do anything else for the rest of the year, and please do carry on doing things, whether it's online activism, work in your own area, getting onto newspaper comments pages and putting our message across, raising funds, whatever it is, keep at it. It's vital. But if you don't do anything else for the rest of the year, come to this demonstration. Or send a donation for it if you can't. But really, we'd rather see you there and bring people. Come smartly dressed, 9 a.m. onwards, Monday the 18th, the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court in the centre of London. We really do hope to see you there, because the world's media is going to be there, and this is a great opportunity to push our way back into the headlines as the only effective nationalist party, and as an increasingly a key player in the street protest movement as well. We're there to make a demand for effective action to protect off-duty soldiers and the public, and to secure real justice for victims of such cowardly terrorism as that unleashed by the Islamists. It's the time, you know. People want leadership. They want action, and they want hope. With the BNP on the road forward, that's exactly what we offer, and exactly what we're going to deliver.
Thank you very much, Nick, and I hope you enjoy your weekend after so much hard work. World news. Saudi nuclear weapons on order from Pakistan. Saudi Arabia has invested in Pakistani nuclear weapons projects and believes it could obtain atomic bombs at will, a variety of sources have told BBC Newsnight. While the kingdom's quest has often been set in the context of countering Iran's atomic program, it is now possible that the Saudis might be able to deploy such devices more quickly than the Islamic Republic. Earlier this year, a senior NATO decision-maker told that he has seen intelligence reporting that nuclear weapons made in Pakistan on behalf of Saudi Arabia are now sitting ready for delivery. Last month, Amos Yadlin, a former head of Israeli military intelligence, told a conference in Sweden that if Iran got the bomb, the Saudis will not wait 1 month. They have already paid for the bomb. They will go to Pakistan and bring what they need to bring. Cultural differences allow paedophiles to escape the law, says internationally recognised child sex abuse investigator Chris O'Connor. Paedophiles from some ethnic groups in Australia are avoiding capture because of a cultural reluctance to report the abuse. I can't recall the last person of black nationality who was charged with serial sexual assaults on kids, Detective Senior Sergeant Chris O'Connor said recently. DSS O'Connor, one of Australia's leading child sexual abuse experts, said common sense suggests paedophilia was just as common in ethnic groups as it was amongst white Anglo-Saxons. He is calling for urgent research to be carried out into the problem. O'Connor said the ethnic groups who should be targeted would probably claim it was racist to single them out. But he urged authorities to ignore the complaints and not bow to political correctness by refusing to probe the paedophilia problem just because of the culture and races involved. DSS O'Connor has been Victoria Police's child sex abuse expert for decades and is internationally recognised for his experience in the field of tackling paedophilia. World at 8, we need to do the same over here, matey, as well. Putin signs law requiring terrorist relatives to pay for damages. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed into law a bill that forces relatives of terrorists to pay for damages caused by their attacks. It also boosts penalties for launching, participating or financing militant or terrorist groups. Under the law, all damages, including moral damage, should be compensated at the expense of the means of the person committing the terrorist act and also at the expense of the means of his or her family, relatives and close people. The term close people refers to those whose lives, health and well-being are valued by the terrorist due to the terrorist's personal relationships with the individuals. The law also stipulates that there should be sufficient reasons to believe that they received money, valuables and other property as a result of terrorist activities or that they generate income from such property. Moreover, a special mechanism is being created to check the lawfulness of the property of terrorist relatives, meaning that the FSB will be given the right to demand such information. If relatives and close acquaintances of suspected militants fail to provide documents proving their rightful acquisition, the law allows for the seizure of such property. There is now a limitation of action under this law, which means it could be implemented regardless of the remoteness of a crime. World at 8, love it. Should be brought into the UK as well as national service. you would find few terrorists that devoted to Islam if they thought their family money or property would be forfeit to a non-Islamic country, and few would even arrive here if they thought their sons would be drafted into military service for the UK. Thought for the day, 73 million of them and more. Well, I cannot be the only one that read the Daily Mail yesterday, and the huge figure of 73 million bods on this small island by 2037 is truly frightening. What is even more frightening is that this doesn't take into account illegal and continuing immigration, which none of the three main parties will ever address correctly or honestly. The DM is very good at giving the sheeples the figures, but fails miserably in solving the problem, as indeed does most of Europe. But we are, however, the most crowded country in Europe thanks to the EU and a weak and lazy establishment. Now I know that thousands of our own people, most of which cannot see the forest for the trees, always trot out the usual anti-racist sentiments. Oh, I don't mind immigrants. Don't live near any, but still don't mind. They do all the jobs I don't want to do, don't they? Don't care how many mosques they build in my town. Looks exotic, doesn't it? Went out with one once, lovely chappie. I have no quarrel with any person of a different faith or colour because I am educated and rich and usually never see 'em. I have to appear to love 'em because I'm in showbiz, so I have to really. All of these comments and more I've heard trotted out in defence of that person's characteristics, but looking at these figures, looking at the state of our country, and notwithstanding the huge amount of money and effort from both our governments and the private sector to accommodate these millions, how the hell are we Brits going to survive without turning Britain into Kosovo at a later date? The answer is we aren't if we don't, or our government, and regardless of the EU and its bussing in of undesirables, actually takes the bull by the horns and does something concrete about it before it's too late. The truck going round parts of enriched London was good, but look at the very nasty publicity it got and the questions in Parliament. Just imagine if a government actually tackled head on this problem. It's bad now, and it will get worse unless something is done. We all have to face the fact that in many areas we are already outbred and outnumbered. That is a fact. Margaret Hodge, that denizen of German Jewish nastiness, was known and seen to bring in sub-Saharan Africans at the time of the general elections to hold on to her seat at Barking and Dagenham. Barking and Dagenham was, before then, a haven of the white working class people. It is no longer. When in doubt, local councillors from the ethnic minority bring in more of their race, giving them houses and the vote. That is how changing a population works, along with making jobs more available to them only. An example is the McDonald's in Camberley. There are two, but this one is a takeaway as well. The McD in the town centre is totally staffed by ethnics and run by them. The one we visited yesterday was, with only two exceptions, staffed by Nepalese, all very nice and very polite. That is the problem. First, because most of these immigrants are polite to your face, it doesn't mean they like you. You are the provider of their income and probably, as a taxpayer, their benefits of free healthcare and education for their clans as well. Why shouldn't they appear polite? It is their job. And secondly, most of these franchises are run by an ethnic and they will employ a large percentage of their own ethnicity. It's only human nature. So do the figures even on this relatively small item. One middle-sized town, 6 cheap food outlets, at least 5 will be foreign-owned and run, and most, if not all, will employ a preponderance of their young ethnics behind the counter, and older ones cleaning up. All their food will be halal, and don't think for a moment that there aren't hundreds if not thousands of movable ethnic bodies in that market alone. That is how they move around the country, buying franchises and bringing in and stocking them with more foreigners. An ever-increasing sea of people moving around our country as if we simply do not exist. It's all very well for some people to say, but if they didn't do it, who would? Well, for a start, idiot shops, if there weren't so many cheap or not so cheap actually food outlets in this country, it would take away the need to bring in foreign staff and we would eat better as a result. Although yesterday I chomped my way through a beef burger and chips, I don't make a habit of it and my children didn't either. And the Burger King is better anyway. But to this awful scenario take the motorways and their so-called rest stops. Just look and weep. They are now all tacky food places, usually in multiples, and always foreign staffed and run and franchised out to. How many English or even British food emporiums do you go to or know a Brit that does and employs his own? Probably some poor bloody pub owner groaning under the threat of being shut down or taken over for a Chinese takeaway. And this is, along with other places of business, how the rot has occurred and been allowed to occur through greed, laziness and stupidity of our own governments, councils and the people who regularly feed these monsters money. You can see the way in which the media and public treat us nationalists, or even non-nationalists, worried over the numbers of foreigners in our country. They denigrate us and make us look racists, and in some cases just bloody mad. Vis-a-vis the gem in the same paper on the racist father killing his family but sparing his Aryan daughter. A real bit of penny dreadful reporting, even for the Mail. But in this they've stated for the world to see that John Miller was a member of the BNP and was overtly racist. Oh dear, and yes, he was also overtly bonkers, wasn't he? His other daughter Abigail looked fairly Aryan to me anyway. The fact is that whenever someone kills someone, unless of course it is a Muslim or non-Muslim, and that's totally ignored, if the media can connect them in any way to a nationalist party, they do, and make the whole sorry story hang on that fact. No one knows the true facts of this awful crime or the reasons behind it. Miller was apparently heavily into skunk and told the Leeds Crown Court he'd heard voices telling him to commit this terrible act. Clearly, being an ex-member of the British National Party had little to do with it. He was clearly having a drug-induced episode, or perhaps he developed schizophrenia, I don't know, but he was not thinking straight at all. I feel sorry for the little 4-year-old being left alone in a world with a legacy blown out of all proportion by the press. But if you put this story with the story of the young woman raped and abused by 3 Muslims, you get the polarity that we suffer in this country, and it is that polarity that allows huge numbers of foreigners into our country with absolutely no checks at all. If you don't see these opposites, you're part of the problem. Just listen. White male killer, member of BNP, killer of non-Aryan child, and a woman has to flee her country of birth because she's so traumatised by several Muslim immigrants, one of whom has yet to be caught. You can see how and what we have allowed our governments to do to us and our country. At the same time having our backs rubbed by the liberal white non-thinkers into a multicultural stupor about immigration, whilst liberally sprinkling everything racist into the problem of having unsupportable millions of foreigners on a small landmass. Make no mistake, the millions are already here and about to be born here. And finally, burglars or a cat call. Police were forced to break down the front door of a house after they received an anonymous 999 call from a cat. But while most people could be charged with wasting police time, Bruce Lee the cat is expected to escape after he was found cowering in the back of a wardrobe. Officers broke down the door of the cat's home after they received the emergency call and were unable to get anyone to answer the phone when they called back. James Coxedge, who owns Bruce Lee, said he looked so ashamed when they returned to their home in North London to find police waiting outside. He told the Camden News Journal he got himself into this situation and then didn't know what to do, so he just hid. If anything, I felt a lot of sympathy for him. He was quite upset by the whole ordeal. It happened the day before his first birthday, so it wasn't great timing for Brucey. Mr Coxedge, 33, says he thinks the cat may have jumped when the phone rang and then started playing with the receiver, accidentally dialing 999. The sound engineer lives in the house with his fiancée Monica de la Cruz and their 2 cats, including Bruce Lee, a Singapore breed. He added, "All I know is I left Bruce Lee and his sister Audrey for a couple of hours, and when I got back the police were waiting outside my flat. They said, 'Don't worry, we've had to force entry, but the cat is all right.' The Metropolitan Police said they took all calls seriously, and when an abandoned call wasn't resolved with a call back from an operator, they would go and investigate." This presenter says this Brucey Lee type puss needs a medal. You never know. Someone might have been trying the house to see if anyone was in. No one was there apart from Brucey Babe. The police must be commended as well, as it must be the highlight of their week, and also the fastest response to a call out I've ever heard. You've been listening to The World at 8. I'm Lynn Mozart, and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend.